Hey, do you have an iPhone 7 Plus that has a grayed out speaker button when you're trying to make a phone call? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through how to repair that. It is a pretty common issue on the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. So let's go ahead and get started with the repair. And by the way, I am Jesse from VCC Board Repairs, and thanks a lot for joining us here on the channel. So let's first go through the process of diagnosing this issue. So let's switch over to this camera here. So iPhone 7 and 7 Plus have a super common issue where the audio IC has disconnected from the motherboard, and one of the symptoms is if you make a phone call, you'll see that the speaker button is grayed out. Also, you'll see that there's absolutely no sound coming from the device, whether it's from the bottom speaker or the ear speaker, and the person on the other line does not hear you, so the microphones also don't work. So basically, overall, no audio. Now, one thing is if you have like AirPods connected to this, you will get audio working through like Bluetooth devices like AirPods or stuff like that. Now, you know, some people, what they often will say is when they have the phone connected to their car, it works, but it's when they're trying to make a phone call when it doesn't. So no sound. Another way is if you don't have a SIM card for the phone yet, what you can do is use the Voice Memo app. So this is the Voice Memo app. Now, depending on what iOS version you're on, you will get different symptoms. So on this iOS version, if you click the record button, nothing happens. On some versions, you click the button and then you get a pop-up saying no audio devices found or recording failed or something like that. Well, basically, it doesn't work. On older iOS, the button is just grayed out. You can't even click it. Whereas this one, you can click it, but nothing happens. So these are all symptoms of audio IC. You know, if you have any of these symptoms, it's pretty much an audio IC issue if it's a 7 or 7 Plus. So let's just go ahead and just get started with the soldering portion of it. So I am doing this live, and I see some people have joined. So if you're joined here on the live stream, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Great, so I see someone says that it's an issue that's common, yet I failed to repair. So you're here to learn. Well, you came to the right place. Also, another thing that I forgot to mention is the baseband on this phone is working, meaning the cellular function is working, and that is one of the risky parts of this repair, is that if you do it wrong, you can end up with a baseband issue where it picks up no service. So hopefully that doesn't happen here, but we'll see. I've done a ton of these and it's pretty rare, but this is one of the high stakes of doing a repair live, is anything can go wrong. So hopefully not today. So let's go over to the microscope. So let me adjust my camera here. All right, so someone asked, do you use a preheater? Yes, I do, the PPD 120. You'll see it right now. And I see someone from the Netherlands has joined. If an iPhone 7 had no service issue, would it be a chip or SIM card reader? So I actually have a video on this, a separate video on baseband problems. So if you just go to my channel, you'll be able to see it. I go into detail about that. But basically, if you get a pop-up that says cellular update failed, then most likely you're dealing with a baseband problem. Also, I noticed my face is over the time. Let me adjust that. So right now I have the board on the preheater. It is a PPD 120 and it's actually set to 120 Celsius. This is essentially to kind of warm up the board and make soldering a little bit easier. especially when dealing with ground pads. They are very, the thermal mass is high, so it takes a lot more heat to melt that solder versus the other pads. I see 8 people are here joining on the live stream. Now if you guys here watching, make sure you share this video. Let's get some more people here on the live stream. So what I'm doing right now is actually removing the little foam things over the connectors. These things will melt while we're doing soldering on the other side. So we might as well just remove them so they don't wrap around the connectors and get in the way. All right, so I got the foam connectors all cleared out. So now I'm gonna flip this over. And I see someone said hello from Lebanon. Hello from Las Vegas, Nevada. All right, so the audio IC is under this sticker here. What I like to do is I peel the sticker back about a little more than halfway. I fold it and then I put a nickel to hold it out of the way. That way I can flip it back over when I'm done and it'll be like new. So this is the audio IC chip. This is the chip we're gonna pull. And one thing you need to notice is the indicator of orientation. So this is at this corner, so make sure you always take note. Now I've done this repair a million times, so you know I kind of already memorized this, but for anyone new, you want to pay attention to this. If you put it the wrong way, you can cause other problems. All right, so what I use for flux is the Amtech 559 ASM. Let me show you guys here. This is authentic flux. I have this link down below in the description, as well as all the rest of my tools. But definitely make sure you use quality flux. If you use bad flux, then it burns on the board. There's a lot of fake flux on the market as well. So then we're gonna put it around the audio IC. Oh, I'm getting a lot of questions, so that's cool. All right, so I see someone asking, home button stops working after audio IC. Maybe you damaged the screen. What tweezers do I use? I use the Union Repair. The 3D Tuyul tweezers. I don't know how to pronounce it. These are really nice, very thin. All right, so let's go back over here. So I have this coated in flux. I'm going to set my hot air to 400 Celsius and 80 air. And I'm using the Quick 861DW hot air station. And the goal here is to just heat around the chip, go in circles, give it maybe 5-10 seconds. And then with your tweezers, now there's many ways to pull a chip. This is just the way I prefer it. So grab the chip, and then if you wiggle your hand just gently, the chip will come off when it's ready. The solder does have to melt underneath. And I'm burning my hand, so let me take a break. Let me heat it a little more. Luckily, this is not underfilled. And my hands are shaking a little bit. There it goes. So that's the audio IC. And those are the pads. All right, so the audio IC, we're gonna reuse this because this issue is not the audio IC itself, is the traces underneath. So the chip itself, you're gonna reuse. No need to, if you wanna save time, you can replace it, but I prefer to just reball it. It doesn't take that much longer. So you might as well save the few bucks that will cost. That's more flux. Get some solder wire. This is Kester 6337. Let me turn on my fume extractor. Basically, the idea is to run some blob of solder over all the pads. And one thing you'll notice is there's a pad already missing. And then make sure you rotate the board so that you don't get a blob of solder on the surrounding components. Like right now, I'm not rubbing the board that much. It's mostly just kind of barely going over all the pads. And I think that's it. Let me see, how could I get this chat easier to see? All right, guys, we have 13 viewers so far. Make sure you hit that like button if you enjoy these type of videos. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments what other type of repairs you want to see. Any like tool reviews, anything else, any other repair related topics. So now I'm going to clean this with isopropyl alcohol. And I am using a little lens blower hand duster to kind of blow away all the flux and alcohol, because the flux will mix in with this alcohol. So I use this little hand duster, so it's like basically free compressed air. By the way, if you guys haven't noticed, I do have a new shirt. It is the Data Recovery Expert. You can see it's a iPhone in a bowl of rice, because we all know bowl of rice fixes water damage. So make sure if you want to get one of these shirts, I do have a website linked in the description. If you go to merch.vccboardrepairs.com, you could buy one of my shirts and support the channel. If you support the channel, I will get more, more tools and equipment to make the channel, YouTube channel, better. So it does ship internationally as well. So if you're not in the US, you can still buy one and it'll ship to you. So anyways, back to the repair. All right, guys, so you can see the board is now clean. There's a little flux here, but that's fine, it's nothing. So this is the issue right here. If you notice closely, there's a missing pad right here. Let me get it in focus. So the missing pad here, and this is what causes the grayed out speaker issue. So the chip connects to this pad, and then this pad connects to this resistor up here. But if this breaks, that signal has disconnected, and that 100% kills the audio function of it. So we got to repair that trace, and then reball the chip and place it back, and then we'll get the phone working again. Yeah, and 99% alcohol does not damage the board. I've been using it for years with no issues. How much do I charge for this repair? So audio IC repair for direct consumer, those are $125. For repair shops, it is $80 B2B price. That prices include return shipping, and it's only in the US. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scratch out this trace that we're going to basically solder onto. And the idea is we're going to reinforce this connection with a jumper wire. So using my X-Acto blade number 11, I'm going to just kind of scratch this out. My blade is a little worn out. Probably should have changed it. So you got to make sure you stay within the lines. There you go. So this trace right here is what we need to run a jumper to. So let me clean up. I did scratch a little bit on the outside, but it should be fine. We're gonna cover this with UV mask, so we'll be fine. All right, I'm trying to rearrange my windows here. All right, so next step is to ask you guys to hit that like button. Let's get some more likes on this video. Also share it on your Facebook feed, or share it in the Facebook groups. Let people know that I'm live, and I'll answer basically any question you guys ask me. So all right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm using my Hakko, it is a FM 2032 micro pencil with the J tip, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tin that trace. So I put some solder on the tip of my iron, and I'm just gonna kind of rub across it. And now we have some solder there, so we could run a jumper too. And then I will get some jumper wire. Usually I keep here under my work mat. Let me see, is this it? And let me get some new wire. So by the way, let me know what you guys think about my new studio setup. I added some lighting in case you haven't noticed. All right, so I have a piece of wire here. We only need a little bit. So what I do is, this came from a roll of wire, so I cut off one kind of small piece like this, and then I'll go and cut off a little more over here. So I'm going to use the NAND as my little workbench here. So we'll need maybe like this much in total. And then I'm going to put this under my work mat. I have a little baking sheet work mat here that I keep my jumper wire in. And then I put the jumper wire, it disappeared under the shield. All right, that's weird. Oh no, it went flying over here. Yeah, this jumper wire is very light and sticky. So I see someone said hi from Switzerland. That's pretty cool. We're getting a lot of international viewers here. So hello from Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Let me know in the comments if you guys ever been to Las Vegas. It's a very fun place to visit. A lot of things to do here. A lot of good restaurants. All right, so as you can see, I've soldered on the jumper wire to that trace, and the trick is to just do quick little taps onto the wire, and that will flow the solder from the trace through the wire. And then now I've cut off the excess wire, so I leave a little bit up until this pad here, essentially, and I press down and I cut it. Then I'm gonna put this onto the side because I'm gonna use that for the second jumper. Someone says, isn't it better to buy the pre-pads? So there's a new product that's on the market. It's like a pre-made pads. I feel like that's too much work because you basically have to do all the same work to get that installed. So I think it's better to just master your jumper skills than using those pads. I mean, the concept is great, but not a practical solution. Someone said, I really need those knives for soldering. So I'm using the X-Acto blade number 11, or scalpel blade actually. It's the number 11, so you just search that on Amazon, eBay, AliExpress, you'll be able to find some. All right, so the second jumper is gonna be like a little table, I like to call it. So it goes on this pad to D12. So the D12 pad breaks not as often as C12, which is the first one we jumped, but enough that I jump it every time just to secure it. So what I do is I'll place the jumper wire like this. Actually, let me adjust my camera a little bit. Okay, so what I do is I'll bend the jumper like this, like a 7, I guess. And you can see like the pad, like the jumper ends right over the pad. So I hold it in place, I get my micro pencil, and I'm gonna do a quick tap. All right, that didn't work, tap it again. Maybe hold it a little longer. Actually, I tapped it a little bit from the side, and that caused enough solder to flow through the jumper wire and kind of hold it in place. So now this thing is solid. And then the next, this is gonna jump to D12. So these are the same line, but this one is the one that breaks. What happens is this breaks, it loses connection to that D12. It's actually a PP1V8 line. So, so what you got to do is you got to run a jumper to that same line. So if it disconnects from here, it's still connected to this side of the same line. All right, and then we got to bend this jumper down to this pad. So what I like to do is go up with my blade and use my tweezers to bend it down. Like that. So now we have the connection. Well, not the connection, not there yet, but we're gonna have the connection here to the two pads, so it's all connected to the same line. And what I do is I'll hold the jumper on my left side and use my micro pencil here to do the same technique, or just do a quick little taps, and then there you go. That should be soldered on. Next, with my blade, I'm gonna cut off the excess wire here at the very end of the pad just by pushing down. Just push down, and there, I broke off the excess wire. I'm gonna put this under my little Amazon baking mat. And then I'm gonna clean this off so you guys can see the jumpers that I've made. And essentially what we're doing is reinforcing the most commonly broken pads, so that if the phone ever does, twist or drop and causes an issue here, there's these wires that are reinforcing these connections so that they don't break and the audio IC issue never comes back. Hello from Portugal. Las Vegas is good. Problem is with restrictions. Are you guys taking visitors from Africa? I have no idea. You might want to check with your, check online for that. Someone said, I got your channel recommended by Louis Rossman. You should really get more viewers. Oh, thank you. That's great. I got a lot of Louis Rossman viewers here. Go tell them thank you for the recommendation for me. All right, so these are the jumpers. Essentially, like I mentioned, this one is the super common. This is like 99% of the issue right here. but every once in a while this one breaks. So now we've reinforced the wires to where they would connect to. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to UV mask. So this UV mask stuff is very messy, so I have it, you know, basically double wrapped here. And what I do is take off the lid. I use my tool here to kind of push from the bottom, and the goal is to kind of just push out a little bubble at the top. I don't know if you guys can see that, and then use my blade to kind of get a little bit at the very end. And then what we're going to do is essentially use the blade as my serving tray and use my tweezers as my applicator. So dip the tip of my tweezer into the UV and just tap away. Just do a bunch of little taps. You don't want to do a big blob because then it gets hard to manage. And then we're just going across here at the top. Now we're putting UV masks so that the jumpers don't move when we're installing the chip. If you don't put UV masks, the jumper, especially this one here on the right side, this jumper will like move around and then you'll mess up. So I like to put a very thin layer across the very top, this very top row or section here. You don't want to go too low because then it creates like a little hill, a little bump of UV mask that's gonna ruin the your chance of installing the chip. So now I'm gonna wipe away the excess UV. Same with my tweezers. Slap this cap back on. And then wrap this like a little taco and put it away over here on my side. All right, so now with the UV liquid there, we got to use a UV light to cure it. So this is a little UV pen, and I would recommend you don't look at this with your bare eyes because it does damage your eyesight. All right, so I see someone. Why do these pads lift? It's just because the way the design is, for whatever reason, that's like a really weak spot. So just over time, the board just flexes back and forth, and just if you look at the shape of that pad, it's like a little disc and then a little like road or trace away, and I guess where that road meets the circle part is like very weak. So just over time, enough twisting and flexing, I guess it just gives out. So these are the most common failures. Now there are other pads that break once in a while, but it's pretty rare that I don't jump them. I know most people, when they think of audio IC, they think of 4 jumpers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I've found that the ones that do fail is these 2. So I only jump those 2. No need to jump these other pads that are pretty rare to fail. Now if I pull the chip and the pads are ripped, then I will jump them. But that's pretty, like I said, that's pretty rare. All right, so the board is now prepped. The pads have been soldered and like flattened out. The jumpers are in place. The UV mask is holding the jumpers. So now let's go to the reballing process. Now, who here in the chats or in the comments of those of you watching later are struggling with reballing? The reballing is a fundamental skill to learn if you're going to be microsoldering, so make sure you practice it. So what I'm going to do, the process is pretty simple. What I'm going to do is put some flux here, and we're going to flatten out these pads just like we did the pads on the board, and essentially it's the same process. So you hold the chip with your tweezers, you get some solder wire on your iron. By the way, I'll have this link. I do have this linked in the description. Oops, big blob there. And then essentially just kind of rub the blob of solder over all the pads. You don't want to rub your iron physically onto the pads, just the blob itself will do it. And you'll see how the texture has changed. They're now like shiny silver pads here. So what I'm going to do is add some alcohol, clean off the flux. You always want to make sure you clean regularly. This flux stuff builds up and it leaves stuff real nasty and it makes it hard for stuff to solder. So make sure you do this regularly, especially if you're new to soldering. You'll often start burning the flux because you're holding it for too long. You're like holding the iron on there for too long. And what happens is you get like a thick layer of burnt flux, which is very hard to clean. Do you remember your very first successful repair? Yeah, I do. I actually posted it on my Instagram. So if you just search on Instagram for VCC board repairs and scroll back for like July 2017, I think the first one was a LG V20 that had no image. I found a burnt pin, ran a little jumper and it fixed it. After that I did a Galaxy S6 charging port, which was very exciting to repair. And I think shortly after I did a TriStar as well. All right, so I've seen a lot of messages here. Let's see what I missed. Yes, we do need a stencil. So right now we're prepping the IC. The goal is to kind of flatten out the pads, make them all even, and also kind of get rid of that factory solder. The factory solder is high temp. What that means is it is lead-free solder, which is different than the leaded solder I'm using. It's a lot higher temperatures and it sucks, but it's environmentally friendly, so that's why it's being used. Okay, so the chip is on it's a clean cloth, and I have this folded in 4 times. And then I'm gonna use a stencil. Oops, I dropped it. I'm gonna use a stencil. So I'm using the Mechanic. Where am I? Mechanic. It's called the i1010. I don't know why they call it this, but it is for 7 Plus, and it's called Power Supply. So there you go, by Mechanic. Now any stencil should work. I mean, it's an audio IC, so it's no big deal. Now some other chips, maybe you want to experiment with different stencils because it does get a little tricky. Like if you're doing Wi-Fi or NAND, sometimes the stencil does matter. But for audio IC, any stencil should work. And what you do is you got to place the stencil over the IC. And the trick here is I put my 2 fingers over it to kind of hold it in place while I reball. And then I already have this prepped. It is some Mechanic solder paste as well. It's also 183 Celsius, 6337 leaded solder. And what you do, super simple, just spread the paste across. I like to go from left to right, like that. So if you zoom in, just fill in as much as you can and then press down and try to press it into all the little squares. Then I go from right to left to kind of scrape away that top layer, so you only leave the paste that's inside the little squares. And pretty much ready to reball. Now if your paste is super runny, like very liquidy, what you can do is run a little clean cloth over it. But right now my paste is very dry, kind of clayish texture, so that's actually perfect. Now for reballing temperature, I do use 330 Celsius and 35 air. And I switch over from my fingers to tweezers so I don't burn my hand. And then I will go in circles, keep an eye on the actual paste So here, let me zoom in so you guys can see the texture. You'll see the texture start changing with the heat. And it's going fast little circles. And then slowly get closer. I like to kind of focus on one corner and see how the pads are now forming, the solder balls. And you don't have to rush, just go. You know, the closer you get, the faster it moves. If you back away, it slows down, so you kind of see how the heat is affecting the paste. So now the solder balls have formed. And I want to let go and poke this through really quick, otherwise it gets stuck in the stencil. That's a common issue I've seen with a lot of new people, is they wait too long to try to poke it out of the stencil, that it gets stuck and then they damage the chip trying to get it out. Alright, so while this is still hot, I'm going to clean it as well. You always want to have clean stencils, because that flux will solidify and become very dirty. Someone asked what I think of JVC stations. I hear they're great. I just never used one, so I can't really comment on it. Like, everyone wants to eventually like upgrade to a JVC because I've heard people say they're the Rolls Royce of solder stations, but I have no idea. I have, like, for me, I have no issue with my equipment right now, that I have no purpose, no reason to change and have to deal with trying to learn a new tool. So that's my position on that. All right, so right now I'm going to clean the chip with some alcohol. It actually was pretty clean already, so that step was probably unnecessary. So I'm now going to hold it with my tweezers, kind of blow it away. Now there's some like residue on there, but I think that's just the alcohol, the impurities in the alcohol that kind of got on there. I see Micro Repairs has joined the chat. All right, so we can do in this scenario, let's say your solder balls are kind of odd shaped. You can add a little bit of flux on there and just hold the chip up just off the surface, spread the flux, and kind of reflow the pads. And now you have a clean looking chip. So why don't you guys let me know on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, what do you guys think of my Reball? 1 being that it sucks, I should probably give up soldering. So it's kind of hard to see, especially when there's flux in there. It's hard to see whether it's even, but you kind of tell. It should be fine. Okay. So before I get started, there's a bunch of like dirty flux on here. So I am going to spray my mat with some alcohol as well and use a little towel here because I got to lay the board on this mat. I don't want it to get all sticky. So now my work mat is clean. All right, so now I got to place this. This is the tricky part. Not tricky, but we're basically coming here to an end. Now, if you're enjoying the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And don't forget, get some merch. Ships internationally. Link is the first link in the description. Let people know you fix phones. You do data recovery with rice, like like this. All right, so I've added a blob of flux on the board. There's some flux on the chip. By the way, who here in the chats offers this repair to their customers? Type a 5 in the, or actually no, type a 9 in the chat if you offer audio IC repairs already to your customers. By the way, I just noticed something. This cap, I must have bumped it downwards. Although I don't think I'm making contact with that other component. All right, I'll bump this upwards while I'm trying to solder on the chip. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, one of the risks to this repair is floating baseband. Directly on the other side of this is the baseband chip. So either when pulling the chip or placing it, you could use too much heat where the baseband chip disconnects because it's underfilled. That's a whole different other story, but the idea is you got to be careful with how much heat you apply because many things can go wrong. Just too much heat in general can float NAND here or even PMIC over here. So you really got to be careful. You got to make sure this is not your first repair ever. You want to practice on iCloud lock boards, on dead boards, until you feel comfortable that you can do this successfully. All right, so now as far as soldering the chip back on, I actually use lower temperature than removing it because we now have lower temp solder on the chip, so we don't need it as high. So right now I'm at 365 and 65 air. And I did put a lot of flux, so I will have to kind of take a little longer. Oh, I see some people do offer it. So see, Mobile Device ER offers it. Jamie Chan offers it. George Van Tessel offers audio IC. Where are you guys located? If you guys offer audio IC, let me know in the comments where you're located. I actually get a lot of customers who message me from around the world asking for audio IC repair. And unfortunately, I do have to decline them. I don't want to deal with international shipments. And I guess it's kind of hard to find shops that offer audio IC. And I'm assuming that not that many shops, if they do offer it, they don't advertise it as much because they're contacting me here in the US for it. All right, so the goal here is to just go in circles. Kind of be careful because I did add a lot of flux, so the chip does move a lot. And then I'm gonna get it closer and closer, and then now I'm gonna try to bump the chip to see if it's soldered on. Yeah, see how it snaps in place? That means it's soldered on. And then I had mentioned I'm gonna try to bump this capacitor here upwards. I have to turn my temperature up a little to 400. All right, that should be enough. And you'll notice that I do have the little indicator dot here to this corner, so it's in the right orientation. And so far everything looks good. I don't see any bridging from like stray solder. I can still see the jumper, that middle jumper here sticking out the top. You can see that jumper there. So everything should be good. Now the only question is, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. So now the only question here is, did I float baseband? If so, you guys will have to watch my other video on how to fix it. Hopefully not. Luckily, I've done a few live streams already on audio IC, and all of them have been successful. So hopefully I stay on my winning streak. So I'm just wiping this down. What's nice is the alcohol also kind of cools down the board for me. So, all right guys, there it is. So that we could kind of pull the sticker back down. Oh, so someone said that they mentioned that cap to me. I guess I missed that comment. It's kind of hard to solder and read the chat at the same time without stopping and just being silent trying to read the chat. And hello to you in Holland. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada. All right, so let me plug in plug everything back in, especially the antennas, because I need to test the baseband function. So if you guys remember in the beginning of the call, we had Verizon LTE fully working, and let's see what happens. It's like, so I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and I get random hairs everywhere all the time. So I'm trying to clean that off here. All right, so everything is plugged in, front camera, and then lastly the battery. Oh, there it goes. All right, everything's snug. All right, so here we go. So let's turn this on. All right, that's a good sign. It turns on. Uh-oh, what just happened? Hold on, let me plug this into charge. I'm gonna pull up my USB meter. So you guys can see it's charging at 1.2 amps, so that's a good sign. We have the Apple logo. I don't know why it turned off at first try. Okay, so, all right, so it's charging, so that's a good sign. I'm gonna unplug it, and now you see it says no SIM. That's a good sign. That tells me that the cellular function is working because it doesn't detect a SIM card. If I would have floated baseband, this thing would have been searching regardless if I have SIM card or not. And that's because the function is kind of lost and doesn't know what's going on. So it just gets stuck in a weird searching mode. So now I'm gonna insert the SIM card. And this, you'll see that the notification will go away. It's in. All right, notification is gone. And Verizon LTE, okay. So now let's test the actual repair I did. So what I like to do is call 611, which is customer service. Oops, I don't know why it keeps doing that. And now you can see the button is no longer grayed out. So first, let me raise the volume. You see it's calling. Let's wait for it to pick up. So one of the nice things about customer service is that the robot on the other end starts talking to you, so you can hear sounds out of it. I don't know why it's taking forever. So someone asked, how did you learn to repair iPhone 11, 12, and 13? Same way I learned the other ones, just trial and error. Watching videos, if there are any available, and just trying stuff. All right, the call's not going through. Usually after a first booting up, it does take a little bit to work. So let me try again. The screen is all beat up, so. All right, there it goes. So you see the time, you can actually hear the talking. I don't know if you guys can hear that. 3/64-2. Oh, there it goes. So yeah, pretty much that's working. I don't know why it's acting weird. Next is the voice memo app. Push record, and it's actually recording. So testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. And you can see the sound waves. Play it back. It's actually recording. So testing, 1, 2, 3. I could hear sound out of both the ear speaker and loudspeaker. So it's safe to say that this is fixed. Make sure you go and delete these from the trash as well, because otherwise the customer is going to hear you making test recordings. So yeah, there you have it. You can see the repair is pretty straightforward. I do appreciate all you guys who've joined here on the live stream. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video if you found it helpful. Share it on your Facebook feed or in the repair groups, and let people know why you watched it. One thing I don't like is when people post a link to a YouTube video on Facebook and just post the link and don't even mention why or anything. So it's always good to add a little caption as to what you found helpful or anything like that. And make sure you check out my merch store. It's the first link in the description. I have a lot of repair related shirts. And let's see, I don't see any more questions, so I think we're gonna have to call it a day. So if you guys have any suggestions on any other repairs I should do, let me know in the comments or in the live chat. Actually, the live chat I won't be able to really see until later, but if you can leave it in the comments, that'd be great. And make sure you check out the links in the description. I also have all the microsoldering tools I use. Let me show you guys that as well. I am redoing my website as well, so I'll make this tool page much more easier to find stuff. So if you want recommendations for soldering tools, the cameras I'm using, DC power supply, microscope, my thermal camera setup, I have all these linked down below. I even have a video kind of describing on how I have my YouTube setup as well. So, okay, someone said do a CPU. I tried that before and it didn't work. So I'm gonna wait until I'm a lot better at a CPU reball before I do it for YouTube. But I'll think about it. I'll see. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and I guess I'll see you next week, either a live stream or a recorded video. So, bye guys.